11 of the weekly show, live December 1773 on Rumble and YouTube. No Ryan today. He's having some, most people would call it car troubles, but for Ryan, it's studio troubles, I suppose, because, he does like to do the old car studio from time to time. He's been in a room lately, though. Today, there's a lot to get to today because we have a lot that we missed. For one, Don Lemon was in fact arrested and then released, but he was still arrested at least. So I think that's worth noting. We can get into that a little bit, but to be honest with you, it's all overshadowed by the news that there was a second release of the Epstein files, another pile of documents, so much to go through. And the number was something like over 3 million documents. Clearly, that is nothing one person can handle. One person cannot go through 3 million documents and find each and everything. However, we as a group are powerful, we being all of us together united. So we're going to go through some of the ones that have made the most public splash so far since the release. Completely related to the fact that the Epstein files were released, and not the best way, to be honest with you. Dan Bongino has made his return to his show, and I gotta tell you, I wouldn't want to be in his position because he has to know that we are here to hold his feet to his fire. Again, we, us, the public, we are here to hold his feet to the fire because he went on his show for years railing on the Epstein files, as he should have. All the things that we talked about, all the same stuff, all the very factual known information at the time, and even some of the conspiratorial stuff that we like to talk about as well. And he happened to find himself in a seat of power in the federal government, where he was the deputy director of the FBI alongside Kash Patel. And I'm sorry if you like Dan Bongino. I don't even know if I necessarily dislike him as a person or whatever, but you have to admit you would have had higher hopes for Dan Bongino and the FBI. I would think you would. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you were 1,000 steps ahead of everybody else, and you thought that no, in fact, even though he consistently for years talked about all these things on a show, the second he gets into power, he's still not really going to act on any of it. And if you thought that, good for you, because you nailed it. But I, on the other hand, absolutely expected more. And we've talked on the show about maybe why there wasn't more that had come out and why he's backpedaling and why he's trying to defend himself. And to be honest with you, if it's anything along the lines of what I had thought, which is he was blackmailed into covering everything up alongside Kash Patel, and knowing what we know from some of these documents, these are very sick, powerful people. It would not be against the grain for them to threaten people's lives or livelihoods. It does not have to be cash bribes. It can be very much you're going to play ball or else bribes, right? Anybody with close friends or family would certainly, would at the very least think about playing ball with these rich, powerful people because they know what will happen if they don't. So to give some form of wiggle room for Dan Bongino, if you like him, maybe that's the situation. I don't know. I can't speak to what the situation was, but what I can say is there's no way you'd be satisfied with the job he did in the FBI for the year he was there. I can't see a world where you listen to the things that he said on his show and you see that performance in the FBI where he immediately tucked his tail and ran and hid and covered with the rest of them. The files are on my desk. Oh, actually, there are no files. Oh, actually, there's tens of thousands of hours of footage. Oh, actually, I never said that. Oh, actually, Epstein did in fact kill himself. I've seen the files. Okay, Dan, the files are public. What did you see? Point it out. I'd love to see it. I'd love to see what you saw. Oh, there. Oh, the what was the original story? Oh, the footage got the footage got wiped from the cameras. Oh, look, we found the footage. Oh, the footage. Oh, the footage was edited. Oh, we're going to release the footage unedited. Oh, the footage was edited even after we said we are going to release it unedited. The entire intelligence agency, the FBI, the CIA, the other bureaucrats, the Attorney General Pam Bondi, all these people, all these powerful people, very clearly, were operating in a cover up. Kash Patel is on camera in Congress testifying under oath. The Epstein files. There's no evidence of anything. There's no human trafficking. That we could not prosecute anything. Actually, uh, Kash Patel, the same Kash Patel, was on Rogan's show, right? And what did he say on Rogan's show? Well, do you think I'm the kind of guy who would cover this stuff? Don't you think if we had something, I'd show you? Am I supposed to believe that's mass incompetence on Kash Patel's part? Kash Patel didn't think we would think it's interesting that there's communications with the former prime minister of Israel, that he was relating with Alan Dershowitz, who would then relate to the Mossad, who would relay back the information to Dershowitz, who would relay the information to Epstein. You don't think it'd be uh, information we'd want to know that maybe Jared Kushner is actually running the Trump administration on behalf of Israel? I'm not saying all these things are necessarily true. What I'm saying is these are the documented things that are in the Epstein file. At the very least, you're going to take shots at your enemies. Don't you think it'd be funny to talk about the fact that Bill Gates got the clap from a Russian prostitute and accidentally gave it to his wife? I'm not saying that's necessarily a crime, but isn't it at least funny? Wouldn't you want to take shots at people like Bill Gates if you had that information? Again, doesn't mean it's true, but what about George W. Bush all over the Epstein files? Trump is all over the Epstein files. Obviously, you're not going to throw your boss under the bus. The list goes on and on and on. There's 3 million documents that got released, and it's not even all of them. That's not even all the files. Pam Bondi, they're on my desk. 3 million documents were on your desk, Pam? Oh, actually, there are no files. There aren't? How is that not immediately cause for termination? Pam Bondi said there are no files. 3 million documents were released, and that's not all of them. There are no files. I don't know. I don't know what they think our reaction was going to be to this. We all knew the Epstein thing was real. We had people were Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted for being the right hand man, if you will, of Jeffrey Epstein. And it was very well known that she was in fact gathering women for Epstein and other powerful people. This is all stuff that was already known. So why would Kash Patel go to Congress and say there was no evidence of human trafficking when that was already known information? These people, Epstein was already in prison. He was already on the radar. That was all public information. And they're running around during the Trump administration. Trump, by the way, who ran on releasing the files, then actively had an administration that was covering up the files. We needed to wait for people like Thomas Massie, good for that guy, and all the Democrats who obviously were going to do it because it was political. But Thomas Massie, who did it against his party's will, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who did it against her party's will. We had to wait for them to push the issue, even though Trump ran on it. And then Trump got in office and said, actually, it's all a hoax. Big Democrat hoax. They made up 3 million documents, Trump? Big Democrat hoax? That's not all the documents, but the 3 million of them? They hoaxed 3 million documents. and then stored them for one day when Trump would claim that he was going to release. Trump was already in office. He already had an FBI. He already had a CIA. He already had an attorney general in his first term. Then he ran most recently talking about the documents that everyone then pretended didn't exist. And we have some clips from Dan Bongino's show today because he did return. And I'm sorry, but he didn't answer a fucking thing. And I just don't understand. If you're watching Dan Bongino's show, I'm curious how you think he has any credibility at this point. Because either one of two things happened for Dan Bongino. Either Dan Bongino actively covered up for the Trump administration and for all these rich, powerful elites with Kash Patel and Attorney General Pam Bondi. Either Dan Bongino actively covered that up, or he was wildly incompetent to the point where he thought there were no files. In either case, whether he was corrupt and abated in the cover up, or if he was just wildly incompetent, either way, he spends a year in the FBI, he comes back, and then you're gonna take his word on his show. Why? What do you think Dan Bongino has to offer you at this point? Because he already had the power. He already had a chance. He already made his choice. So what part of Dan Bongino are you interested in at this point? He told everyone that he knows Epstein killed himself because he saw the file. Guess what, Dan? Files have been released by law. Tell me what you saw. I'd love to see it. It's public information. You can't hide. You can't say it's it's an ongoing, it's public information now. It's no longer classified. You said you saw the documents when they were, but now they're not. Now they're public. So what documents did you see, Dan? You're going to come on your show. Again, we got the clips. I can't wait to play them. And you turn it around on us, the black pillars, the doomers. I'm a black pillar because you talked about all the same stuff I talk about, but you had a chance to make a difference and didn't. And your defense of yourself is that I'm just a black pillar. I'm too negative for you, Dan. I don't know the credibility he has at this point. If you're a Dan Bongino fan, I really don't. I'm glad his show's popular. I'm glad it helps Rumble when it's in his time slot the most popular show. By the way, shout out to Rumble. Every show, the top 5, none of them are YouTube at this point. It's Rumble, Twitch. YouTube is becoming so irrelevant because of the things we've talked about on this show, because of the open, obvious censorship. On behalf of the WHO, by the way, which is sometimes the shit they'll pull. It's so obvious that YouTube was never a platform. It's nice to see real platforms like Rumble doing well. So shout out to Rumble. And you know what, Dan Bongino, congratulations on your show and your success. But you're not going to have it forever. Because credibility and trust. Like, these are things that are hard to gain and easy to lose. And you spent your entire career building credibility and trust to go 1 year in the FBI and lose it. And, maybe I'm a black pillar, maybe I'm a doomer, right? But people at some point are going to open up to this. The more the information comes out, the more we're going to go, hey, actually, I kind of remember, didn't Dan Bongino say that Epstein killed himself and he saw it in the files? He saw I'd love to see it. Kash Patel, actually, now that I remember that, Kash Patel said that there was no evidence of human trafficking in the files. Huh. Pam Bondi, now that I remember it, Pam Bondi said that there were no files. Trump said it was all a Democrat hoax. That's weird. They made up 3 million files. That's a very active hoax. That takes a lot of effort. So, if you're a Trump guy, that's fine. Like, we've already classified ourselves on the show many times as Trump defenders. When it became a situation where I felt it was necessary, but this is an undefensible situation for Trump and Bongino and Cash Patel and Pam Bondi. This is completely undefensible. I don't know, again, not to beat a dead horse, but I don't know how you can go to Dan Bongino's show now and find any credibility, have any trust, any faith in anything he says. Because he already showed his cards. He had a chance. He had a chance to act. He didn't do anything about it. And his defense of this is that we're all doomers and black pillars. So we're going to get into a handful of the specifics on some of the files that are making the rounds. And again, there's 3 million files. And to be honest with you, a good chunk of them probably are nothing. There's probably a million files that are completely meaningless to most people, especially out of context. But there's another 2 million files, right, that were released. Maybe a million of those, there's like kind of something there. Nothing super interesting, but it starts to build a picture. And then there's like 1,000 files maybe where it's like, holy crap, like I can't even believe what I'm reading. And whatever, those numbers are workable. You could, whatever you want to say. I'm just trying to give a picture of the percentages of how out of all these files, like how few of them are actually anything very, very interesting, but they are there, which is something Pam Bondi said they weren't. So to get into some, just a couple, just a few tidbits of the files, and this is going to be a thing. This is going to be, now I don't know if people remember, but when Elon bought Twitter, they did the Twitter files. This was a big thing. He opened, like, a lot of the information opened up to a handful of select reporters, and they did outstanding work breaking it down into what was called the Twitter files. And we went through every time there was a release of the Twitter files, and this was a big deal. I think, other than the Epstein file, this was one of the biggest breaks that has happened in recent history. And we went through and we read through every single one of the Twitter files on the show. We went through every single one of them because it was confirmation to all the things that we talked about for forever. Like, we've been talking about these things forever. Shadow banning, rich, powerful, elites deplatforming, the open portals between the air quotes platforms, and government bureaucracies like the Department of Homeland Security and the federal, the FBI, the CIA, like all these places had what was called portals to all these different platforms, YouTube and Twitter and all these places, Facebook, Meta. And, we saw a little bit of this. Zuckerberg went on Rogan and he talked about how the FBI told him about the Russia gate and the Russian hoax and the Biden laptop, and that was a hoax, and not to relay the information, right? But that was all information that was delivered from the FBI, and all these places, got right in line and said, yes, sir, sir, yes, sir. And again, this is all things we always talked about, but when the Twitter files came out, it was like, I knew it. Like, I knew it. And now I get to just kind of breathe and look at it, and just, I told everyone, like, we knew something was going on. Some of it was kind of obvious if you were paying attention. To the average person, it sounded crazy and conspiratorial, but for the people who were paying attention, it's like, no, I'm looking at these documents. I'm looking at their files. I'm looking at their files. They're open. They're public about a lot of this stuff. I'm looking at all of this, and people are telling me it's conspiratorial. It's conspiratorial. It's conspiratorial. Elon buys Twitter, opens it up, Twitter files, and now it's like, it's everything I said. It's everything I told everybody. We told you they were shadow banning. You said no. We told you they were censoring. You said no. We told you it was done on behalf of the government. We're showing you the open portals. You said no. But now I have the proof. Now I have the evidence. And that's what's different. That's what the Epstein files are. We talked about all these things. We told you that Epstein was tied to the CIA and the MI6 and Mossad, right? And we told you and we told you and we told you it was conspiratorial. But now there's the documents. There they are. Told you. We're looking at them now. Now we're looking at it. These are what everybody wanted to see. We told you there were rich, powerful people involved. It seemed like it'd be really weird for a strange, random accountant, basically, uh, to be doing all these very strange things. We told you about things like spirit cooking. We told you about Pizzagate, right? That's another one. Pizzagate, conspiratorial. Here's the evidence. All the things we told you from before. Exactly what we said before. You yelled conspiracy. I tried to tell you 10 years ago. How long has the Pizzagate scandal been? I tried to tell you. Now the files are out. And by the way, there were parts of Pizzagate that were released before and people still shouted conspiratorial. We already had the WikiLeaks email leaks. We talked about all this stuff. What was his name? John Podesta, right? All these email leaks. And we're looking at this stuff and we're like, man, some of this doesn't sound right. And it's tying with a lot of these other things. Again, it was a big conspiracy. But, here we are again. Epstein files are out. Is it still a big conspiracy? I'd love to know. If you were in the it's a conspiracy group, right? And I was in the conspiracy group, right? I was one of those crazy conspiracy theorists, or the black pillars, as Dan Bongino would love to point out. But now here we are looking at the files. It's all the things we said it was. We talked about Pizzagate. We talked about spirit cooking. We talked about just all of it. All of it. So it's one of those things when you start to see it in person, it really starts to tie in. We talked about just controlled media, right? Even that was like, people thought that was crazy. Well, it's a free press, right? It's a free press. It's not. They've been controlled. Very obviously. There's released documents from half a century ago that talked about the government controlling the media. That's been open, known information, and yet I was told it was conspiratorial after the information was released. Even that's a level of putting your head in the sand that I could never imagine. I'm not saying we're right about everything all the time. I'm sure we get shit wrong all the time. But, it's never, first of all, if we do get something wrong, it's never intentional, right? We're not trying to misinform people. But if we see snippets of information, I want to explore that information. And maybe we make a couple, links to things that don't link, and that was, maybe that's our bad. But it's better than pretending the information doesn't exist. Would you rather have all the information omitted from your life and only stick to the known information that people want you to know? How are you going to operate like that? What does that do for you? What does that do for your mental state, right? You're walking around just thinking everything is, because this is what's going to trigger people to snap. Because one day, and this might have happened with some of these Epstein file releases, one day you're going to run around thinking the world is one way and find out it's not. And it might be too much for you to handle. But we've been slowly following it the whole time. So for me, it's not a big leap. For Ryan, it wouldn't be a big leap if something explosive were to come out, because it's like, well, we kind of already thought that was the case. But man, if you watch CNN or MSNBC or Fox News, even Fox News, and you completely buy the narrative, just the mainstream narrative, and then Epstein files break, and you're hearing things about Bush Senior disemboweling infants. Again, these are claims. Like, maybe we got to put the stipulation on this. All of this is claims. A lot of it is eyewitness testimony, and who knows how credible the people are, and all these things. I get all that. But would you rather we don't talk about it? Would you rather pretend that these don't exist? That doesn't mean George Bush did disembowel infants. But fuck, if there's people who were claiming it, I'd love to look into that. I'd love to look more into it. By the way, one of the people who was shouting at the rooftops about this went missing, of course. And that's the other thing, that everything's conspiratorial, but not everything cannot be this coincidental. We're talking about all these victims, all these eyewitnesses, all these people going missing, dying mysteriously in car accidents or plane crashes, or like one of them was shot by a police officer. Like, people are being found dead in their apartments with like execution style gunshot wounds to the back of their head and then being ruled suicide. Like, none you cannot just go through life thinking everything is coincidental. Oh, the person who tried to break this big story just accidentally shot himself in the back of the head twice. Like, if you believe that shit, I'm sorry, but like, you need to open your eyes and open up yourself to possibilities that things are not just incompetence, but things are worse than that. I've talked about this with rich, powerful, people, but also the government before. And I just can't live in a world where I just chalk everything up to incompetence. And that's why the tagline on the show for the longest time was, these people know exactly what they're doing. If people come out and they sound incompetent or they sound stupid, you don't get to these points of power positions by being a total dumbass. You don't get there that way. That's not how it works. Because in a world that everyone thinks is painted in a certain way, right? Like, these people running for office are just these everyday normal people, and they get these grassroots movements. And there are people out there, the Thomas Masseys of the world. That's fine. I get it. But the by and large, out of the 500 and something members of Congress, right? And then we're not even talking about bureaucracies at this point. The chances that all of them are just massively incompetent people who just happen to get tons of funding is ridiculous. Everything's a game. Everybody's tied into it. There's all types of corruption. Everything's done with malice or intent. It's not all coincidental. It's not all incompetence. And if you think that's how the world operates, I'm sorry, but it's not. It's not. And if you want to go watch a right-leaning podcast where people talk about how all these people in Congress are just stupid, then you can go watch Ben Shapiro. That's fine. But we're going to tell it the way it is on this show. We're going to talk to you about evil people doing evil things, because that's what it actually is. And if you live in a world where you think everything is coincidental and mass incompetence, and then you see the Epstein files, your worldview is completely changed and you're caught off guard. It's like getting punched really hard in the face. You have to try to collect yourself really fast because you know you're about to be in a fight. But when you're always expecting a fight, you don't even get punched in the face in the first place because you're ready for it at all times. And that's the difference. That's the difference in worldviews. And I really welcome people to try looking at it. If you don't, try looking at it this way, where going in that these people are not good people and they are not here for you. They are not your friends. They are not here to help. They don't care about your health care. They don't care about your 401ks. They don't want you to be rich. They don't want you to be strong. They don't want you to be healthy. They're not on your side, by and large. There are the handful out there. I will say, I've always said on the show, there's always a handful, but it's never the majority. Um, so to get into some of the specifics, and then we'll start playing a couple of the Bongino clips. And by the way, just a quick sidebar. The Don Lemon thing. The very common defense is that somehow arresting Don Lemon is a shot at free press. It's a violation of the Constitution. But just to put it very simply, you can't film yourself committing crimes and then try to hide behind journalism. So no, absolutely not. It's not free press. It wasn't free speech. It wasn't freedom of expression. You committed a crime. You were dumb enough to put it on camera, and you got arrested. And you could look at the game politically, and from a political standpoint, it might have been politically smart and savvy for Trump to just leave it alone and let it go. Because remember, these people will get back in power one day, and they will remember that you arrested Don Lemon, and you did so rightfully so, by the way. You were correct to arrest Don Lemon. He broke the law. He was retarded enough to film it himself and then share it publicly. But with that said, politically speaking, the safe play would have been to leave it alone, because at some point they're going to get back in power and they will remember it and they will come for you. The counter to that is they were already doing it anyway, so it's about time we just start fucking doing it too. So I get it. I do get it. And I'd love to see that justice play out one way or the other. But I think, to be honest with you, we as much as I'd love to talk about the Don Lemon situation, we definitely have more things to talk about. So again, Pizzagate. We were told for 10 years, 15 years, I can't even remember, but we were told that Pizzagate was conspiratorial. Fast forward to current day, Epstein files are out, and just a couple of the things, right? So this is from we don't know, black bar, thanks FBI, to Jeffrey E. Subject replying, by the way, to the pizza monster. You mean radiating a soft glow with the look of bliss and excitement? Yeah, that's the pizza. She looks pregnant. Must be talking about the pizza. We went through when we talked about all these too, because to be honest with you, again, some of the stuff was already released when we had a WikiLeaks release, and John Podesta was all over it. But um, some of these are just crazy. Uh, while on the yacht, he witnessed African American males having sex with white blonde females, all of whom were bleeding during intercourse. He was a victim of a type of ritualistic sacrifice in which feet were cut with a scimitar but left no scarring. On the yacht, he witnessed babies being dismembered, the intestines removed, individuals eating the feces from the intestines. He was also raped by George Bush 1. The reply, thanks, blank. I didn't realize Bush raped him too. Okay. Again, doesn't mean any of these people are guilty, but I'd rather live in a world where the information is out there. Reply, head count for pizza. Does this pizza offer include those of us who can't make the meeting because we're out here editing? Because if so, count me in. This email in color coded in black and white and will combust in 30 seconds. Head count. Who is all in the Austin office today and is going to want pizza? We only have one slice and we need to know how thinly to slice it. Simply send a single response, filed, color coded, double sided, and appropriately labeled, signed and set on fire. Where are you? Are you okay? I loved the torture video. Yeah, I mean, there's so much. There's so much here. By the way, on that, let me see if I can find this. Here's one. It says from Jeffrey Epstein to former Prime Minister of Israel Ehud Barak. So I mean, all these all these all these people are in on it, and you know, communicating with the former Prime Minister of Israel doesn't mean you're a Mossad agent. Lots of people probably had communications with him, right? But it's just a little more. Here's let me see if I can find this here. Some of this is small, so you're gonna have to give me a chance to go into it here. But um, oh, here's a good one. Trump has been compromised by Israel, and Kushner is the real brains behind the organization and his presidency. Again, this is an unclassified document. Who knows? Doesn't mean it's true. It's just a weird thing to say. Epstein was represented by Dershowitz. CHS, remember Dershowitz left Alex Acosta, the U.S. Attorney General, and Epstein belonged in both the U.S. and allied intelligence services. CHS shared phone calls between Dershowitz and Epstein, during which he took notes. After these calls, Mossad would then call Dershowitz to debrief Epstein was close to the former Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Barak, and trained as a spy under him. Barak believed Netanyahu was a criminal of Saudi Arabia, Israel, and the United States. United Arab Emirates, all alleged against Qatar, Turkey, Iran, and Syria. One of the CHS, a lot of black bars, Epstein CHS, became convinced that Epstein was co-opted Mossad agent. See previous reporting. It's a released file. Doesn't mean anything. Missing a lot of context. Could be nothing, but it could be something. Would you rather not know the information or would you rather know the information? And I'm just saying, before the files, we had suspected, we literally, me, Ryan, and others, that he was tied to the CIA, that he was tied to Mossad. I even thought he was maybe tied to British intelligence, MI6. So when you go in thinking that he has ties to intelligence agencies, and then documents are found claiming the same, it tends to bolster your opinion a little bit on that. Doesn't mean it's right. Doesn't mean I'm right. I could be completely wrong. Maybe he has no ties to any intelligence agencies. He was a single, all on his own man, recording all these rich, powerful people doing horrible, disgusting things with underage people. Maybe this all is coincidental, right? Again, what's your worldview? It's all coincidental. It's all incompetence. Or is it evil? Is it done with malice and intent? I already explained where I stand on this. Maybe you stand on the other side. But it's interesting. It's interesting to see. Here's more. There's documents that Jeffrey Epstein was maybe tied in with plans to extort Libyan officials and seize state assets under the pretext of helping rebuild the country, involvement from MI6 and Mossad. I went in thinking that already, so then I see the documents, I feel bolstered. Doesn't mean I'm right, but there's more evidence that points to my worldview than yours. Maybe you're right in just the evidence isn't there. It's very possible. Maybe it's all coincidental. Maybe it's all conspiratorial. Maybe it's all incidental. Maybe it's all incompetence. But what's your worldview? Bill, Bill Gates. The Bill Gates stuff is interesting too. It's not, to be honest with you, of all the stuff, uh, the Bill Gates thing is like the least consequential. It's gross. He was clearly involved. In fact, I believe if I remember correctly, Ryan and myself have talked about this, but Melinda Gates, part of like their divorce, if I remember correctly, was somewhat tied in with Bill Gates and underage women. I feel like I thought that was the case, and maybe I'm wrong on this. But Bill Gates, allegedly, of course, caught an STD from Russian girls and begged Epstein for secret antibiotics to dose Melinda without her knowledge. Yeah, that's what I thought. Melinda divorced him in 2021 and specifically cited ties to Epstein. So it's like, we told you, we talked about it. It was all conspiratorial, but now it's kind of out there. All the things we thought are slowly becoming true, right? My favorite phrase turned out to be true. We were conspiracy theorists. We were telling you things that were untrue, misinformation, disinformation, malinformation, right? All these stupid terms. But now they're turning out to be true. Isn't that weird? Maybe the whole time we were speaking truth, everybody else was speaking disinformation. Right? They accuse others exactly of this thing that they're doing. Isn't that is that Saul Alinsky, right? Am I right about this? Accuse others of doing the exact thing you're doing, or whatever the quote was. It was something along those lines. It's like part of the playbook, rules for radicals. You accuse us of disinformation. Meanwhile, the whole time we're telling the truth, you're lying, saying we're lying. That's the play. But now, as the information comes out, it becomes more and more obvious. Let's get to a couple Bongino clips, because Bongino is in fact back, and he, at least in my opinion, has some splaining to do. Right? Jesus Christ. Here's. I'm not even setting the clips up. Here's Dan Bongino back for the first time since his vacation in the FBI.
This movement's been hijacked by a small group of dipshits and bums and losers who are nothing but doomers under the frame of accountability. I'm all about accountability. I just showed you what we did or what we didn't. Did I not? I'm not sitting here going, hey, trust me, bro. I showed you. If you like it, great. If you don't, that is absolutely your constitutional right. You paid for it to go out and go, that sucked. I would have done something different. Okay, but you didn't. You didn't do anything different. I'm not sure if you volunteered to serve or not, but you didn't. You sat in the front row with your popcorn, ankle biting, throwing this popcorn at the ring at two guys in there sparring away, fighting for this country while you did shit. You just talked about it. So you didn't do anything. Now, I'm back on the air. I'm not going to take on every single.
By the way, what the fuck kind of shot is that? Coming from a guy who just talked about it for years, right? Isn't that what we're doing here? Isn't that what you're doing currently, Dan? Like, you're no longer in the FBI. Don't you now just talk about it? That's a weird shot, don't you think? Oh, what the fuck? What the fuck did you do? Just talk about it? I don't know. The same thing you're doing currently. Just talking about it. Is that a problem?
Thing in one day in one show. But I'm telling you right now, your bullshit, I'm done with it. The grifter bums, all you guys are a class of doomers. Everything sucks all the time. You would have done it different. You didn't do shit. You did nothing. You didn't volunteer. You didn't ask. You didn't give up your show to do. You did nothing. All you did was bullshit people and say, nothing's happening. And then when we tell you, oh, it just happened, you move on to something else you say is not going to happen. And then when that happens, you move on to something else. Totally full of shit.
And here's where he tries to brag about all the shit he did, right? So, first of all, what a bizarre defense of your again, whatever way you want to play this. Either it was incompetence or it was done with malicious intent, right? Either he's a liar or he sucked at his job. It's one of the two. It's one of the two. Either way, you don't have credibility anymore. So his defense of the fact that, and we can stay on Epstein with this if you want, or we can go to other things, but the fact that nobody from the Epstein files went to jail, nobody from the 2020 election theft went to jail, nobody for Charlie Kirk assassination, Trump's attempted assassination, the guy was taken out, but we didn't get more information about any of these things. I mean, we can go on and on about all this stuff with all the corrupt judges and justices that went after Trump. Like, nothing happened. Nothing happened. They went after low tier drug pushers. They went after basically they did local police work. Like, you took murderers off the street. Great job. That's what the police do. Like, Dan's coming to you looking for applause for doing the bare minimum because the last administration was so bad that the bare minimum seems great. Good job doing your minimum requirements. What about all the stuff we're talking about? The stuff you talked about in your show, which according to you isn't doing shit. It's just talking. But that's what you're doing now, Dan. You're not in the FBI anymore. So now you're not doing shit again. You're just talking, right? And by the way, that's your defense? Is that I didn't get picked to be deputy director? What in the fuck kind of defense is that? I wasn't picked to be deputy. I'm Dan Bongino. You didn't like the job I did, but what did you do is the defense. That's what you're coming to me with. After a year of being in the FBI, sitting on the Epstein files, worse, covering for the Epstein files, covering them up actively, side by side with Kash Patel, Pam Bondi. And if Dan would have been there for a year, did nothing, came back to his show today and said, "Let me tell you about the shit I had to deal with in the FBI," and then started tearing shit down, I would have respected the fuck out of that. But he's still playing on their side, pretending to be independent. Dan, you're still playing ball with the FBI. You're not independent anymore. You're the mainstream media. You're just pushing the narratives for the administration. You're no different than CNBC or MSNBC or CNN when Barack Obama's in office. You're literally doing the same thing. You're mainstream old guard media now, but you're doing it from Rumble Studios. And the defense of that is that I wasn't in the FBI, so let me correct. It's my constitutional right to say so. Thanks for backing up my constitutional rights, Dan. But that's your defense, is that I wasn't in the FBI. So everything I'm talking about is just not doing shit, just talking. I don't know what the hell he was hoping that was going to be, but that was pathetic. And then finally, here was, again, hiatus, gone from a show for a year in the FBI, comes back as the Epstein files are released after they all said that they didn't exist. He's back, and then this is what he has to say. This is his big. This is it.
But it was a level 10 problem. It was never going to please everyone. The person I thought at the time who nailed what the issues were with this was our good friend Mike Davis. I'll play the CNN one, the clip next, but throw up Davis's tweet. There were a ton of problems with this. There was grand jury material. There was he put this out. He's anyone who rapes kids deserves the death penalty. Amen. Here's the problem with the Epstein mess. The FBI doesn't have the evidence many thought it did. I want to see the files, folks. I said, don't let it go. I meant it. We got elected. We looked at it. The file was not what was in there, was not what we thought would be in there. There are not tapes with powerful men raping kids. There is not a list. Epstein's Rolodex was already public. The file's largely unreleasable for many reasons, including grand jury material, which they're moving to get a lot of that out. Court records under seal, child pornography that was downloaded from the internet. You can read the rest of it. Protection of victims. We obviously don't want victims' names out there. Here's another one. Keep that up for a second. Double or triple hearsay. You're seeing it now. You're seeing on Twitter, like this guy said, Joey Bag of Donuts, cut this woman with a razor, or this young girl while raping her. And you're like, wow, that's a really horrible story. It's terrible. And then you find out Joey Bag of Donuts was some famous athlete who was playing a game in Phoenix that night. Like a lot of this stuff was just people called, not all, by the way, not all of it. This is an extremely serious case. Let me be crystal clear. But that doesn't mean every single tip that came in, had any kind of veracity to it at all. A lot of the stuff was clearly debunked. He said, does anyone believe Bondi, Patel, or Bongino would cover up for Bill Clinton or Bill Gates? Didn't even make sense. I was all over this case on my show. The Trump DOJ wanted to be fully transparent, but it couldn't at the time for the reasons above. It's not going to satisfy many, and that's fine. But folks, I'm not going to spend the next 2 years talking about it.
He's not going to spend the next 2 years talking about it. I can tell you we are. What else are you talking about that matters more than this? Taxes. I've talked about this on the show before. Would you rather listen to people talk about taxes? Because again, Ben Shapiro's he's got a great show. If you want to talk about incompetent politicians and taxes and just live in that worldview, but I don't. And I'm telling you, now that these files are public, give it a little bit of time and watch what happens, because it's going to be a lot more than what happened under the watchful eye of the FBI for the last 10 years. Because I can tell you, you want to talk about not doing shit, Dan? That's what the FBI did with all this information. They didn't do shit. You're talking about out of these millions and millions of documents, all of these aforementioned elites that were tied into this. And you're telling me the only two people guilty of crimes was Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. That's what we're supposed to believe now. Because there's only two people, to my knowledge, who actually were convicted of anything. And all the other information, that's all just hearsay, triple hearsay, right? Okay. We're going to see. We're going to see, because now it's in the watchful eye of the public who actually cares about this shit. And I bet more happens with it in our hands than it did in the FBI's. Because there will be people following up on claims. 3 million documents were released after they told us none existed. There were no files. Their words, not mine. There are no files. They're on my desk. Nope, just kidding. There are no files. That was the official stance of the Trump administration until people like Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene pushed to make it happen. And then it was quick. By the way, they missed tons of deadlines. Quick. Better black bar before we release these files. Because we got to protect the victims. Which is why we're black barring the tos and froms of emails. To protect the victims? That doesn't make any sense, does it? There's always a million excuses why not. But there's always more reasons why too. So Dan Bongino's defense can be that I wasn't in the FBI, so it was my fault. That's fine. I'll take responsibility, Dan, I guess. But as these files get released, as more becomes public, more and more people are going to start putting things together that the FBI never tried to put together. And it's going to be more and more clear that it was bigger than just Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, because currently that's the current narrative. That's the story. That's their truth. Is that it was just Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell against the world, right? Just running a small time human trafficking ring for only Epstein, apparently. It was just Epstein getting massages, right? And then a little inappropriate touching, but nothing else. House is wired with cameras, but there's no footage. House is all mic'd up, but there's no audio. Emails for days between rich and powerful people, including prime ministers of foreign nations. But it was just Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell against the world. No ties to the MI6, no ties to Mossad, no ties to British royalty. It's all coincidental. I don't want to live in that worldview. People like Ben Shapiro might want to live in that worldview. People like Dan Bongino might want to live in that worldview. But I think that, to be honest with you, I think they're they're actively full of shit. Um, they're lying to you. They're lying to you. Dan Bongino is lying to you. Diddy parties. Diddy party. You know, Diddy parties. You know, the funny thing is the whole Diddy thing. Out of everything that was talked about with Diddy, the only two things that were strong enough to get convicted was like transporting a prostitute or something. Like that were like, I think that was the official thing that he was charged on, wasn't it? For transporting prostitutes, which, by the way, that's got to be the craziest fucking charge I've ever heard of. Like, it's illegal to transport prostitutes, not to like do anything with them or pay for them or like, I don't like, I don't know. I mean, for all the stuff that we heard about Diddy, it kind of seemed like more of the same old BS Me Too stuff. It's like girls after the fact claiming they didn't like it, and whatever, that might be offensive. I don't really care. That's just what it seemed like to me. It was like one star witness, and she clearly, I don't know. Like at some point, you should have said something then if it was serious. I don't. But it was convenient for you then, wasn't it? What was her name? Cassie or something. It was convenient for you then because you were rich and famous, right? But all these years later, now it's not so convenient. Now maybe you have regret, but you know, regret isn't crime. Like it's just not how it works. Like just because you don't like it anymore, doesn't mean it was illegal. And you can't, after the fact, claim there was no consent when there was very clearly consent at the time. Because again, you said nothing about it while it was happening. I don't. I don't know. That's just my thing on the Diddy. Like to me, the Diddy thing. It seems to me like Diddy was into some really weird shit. But as far as I can tell, it was all extremely consensual. So I don't know. What does that tell you about Hollywood? They're all into weird shit, right? Aren't they all a bunch of fucking, clearly a bunch of weird people? We've talked about like Lady Gaga and spirit cooking, and like we talked about some pretty crazy shit on the show. Adrenochrome, right? And all of this stuff you can find laced throughout the Epstein files. Which again, as of a year ago, the Epstein files didn't exist. It was a conspiracy. It was on Pam Bondi's desk, then it wasn't on her desk, and there was footage, and then there wasn't footage. And he did, Epstein did kill himself, and I did see the files, but now the files are released, and show me, Dan. Show me. That's it. That's it for today. Ryan's gonna have to he's gonna have to get himself fixed up so he can get back on the show because I don't know. Sometimes I like to just sit back and let Ryan talk. So maybe he'll be back tomorrow for more here on Rumble and YouTube. But if you're on YouTube, why aren't you on Rumble? Just download the app. So it's actually that's a legitimate question. Like I actually want an answer in the chat. If you're on Rumble, why are you on? Or if you're on YouTube, why are you on YouTube? It's like doesn't even make sense. Just like the app is free. You just go to the App Store and you download Rumble. You make an account. It's all free, and then you just watch stuff on Rumble, where it will always be. Or you can watch stuff on YouTube for as long as they'll let it be. But Rumble's clearly the better answer. So we'll see you tomorrow on Rumble. And YouTube if they let us 8:30 ish p.m. because it always seems to be an ish, but we're right in that time slot. Thanks everyone.